When I was at school, there was a lot of things that I was really good at, like getting bullied. But when it came to subjects I hated, math was the reigning champion. I hated maths. But amidst these trials and tribulations, one subject stood as my unconquerable fortress: history. I loved history. And it seems my affinity for history wasn't just a phase, considering I'm about to tell you the story of one of Scotland's greatest castles. So if stories of Scottish history interest you, then hit the subscribe button on the screen and etc, etc. You know the drill. But in the meantime, let's do some exploring. Welcome to Dunnottar Castle. Now this is an area that is steeped in so much Scottish history, but to learn its origins we'll have to go back a few thousand years to when it all first began, in the era of the Picts. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Picts were one of Scotland's earliest civilisations, first recorded in Roman texts around the 3rd century AD. Now, the Picts are shrouded in this sort of myth and legend, and it's pretty much because of the lack of historical and archaeological evidence for them, but there's definitely plenty here at Dunnottar. Now this is a nearby sea stack called Dunnicaer, and there's archaeological evidence of Picts living here on this sea stack from thousands of years ago. In fact, the name Dun is Pictish for fort, and the name Dunnottar itself is derived from the Gaelic Dun Foither. Now the story about the discovery of this sea stack here goes all the way back to the 1830s, when apparently a local gravedigger spoke to a local bunch of youths and told them there was gold on top of the sea stack. Now obviously these kids, probably quite poor at the time, started to climb up this sea stack here looking for gold, but it wasn't gold that they found. Instead, it was something far more interesting. What they found is Pictish stones and carvings on top of the sea stack. Now this is the earliest recorded discovery of this Pictish site until the archaeological expedition by the University of Aberdeen in 2015. These incredible image reconstructions carried out by the University of Aberdeen show one of the earliest Pictish forts ever discovered. Their team discovered partial remains of houses on the cliff edge, which shows that much of the settlement had fallen into the sea. Carbon dating shows this to be one of the oldest Pictish forts ever discovered. It appears the site was abandoned in the late 4th or early 5th century. It is not known exactly how long ago the site was originally inhabited. Based on the current archaeological evidence we have, is that the Picts were living in this settlement during the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. The settlement may have then shifted to Dunnottar, which was an elite centre of Pictish society by the 7th century. Saint Ninian, an early Christian missionary, established a place of worship here in 400 AD, marking the beginning of Dunnottar's religious significance. So the castle's first documented history comes around the 13th century when King William the Lion used it as a local administration. Now the strategic and symbolic value of Dunnottar was highlighted when William Wallace came into the picture in 1297, and if you've never heard of William Wallace, he was kind of a big deal in Scotland at the time. On September the 11th, 1297, William Wallace led Scottish forces to a significant victory at the Battle of Stirling Bridge over English forces, marking a pivotal moment during the First War of Scottish Independence. This triumph established Wallace as a national hero and the guardian of Scotland. Now William Wallace, he didn't only just win battles, he also set early fashion trends in kilts. Rumour has it that his enemies would stop in the battlefield just to admire his kilt. In 1297, William Wallace seized this castle after the Battle of Stirling Bridge, taking it from English forces who had a garrison stored here. Legend has it that Wallace, at just 21 years of age, used the castle's postern to enter the fortress. Now a postern was a small secondary gate in castles, typically located away from the main entrance, and it was mainly used for discreet and tactical purposes to get in and out of the castle. On these very cliffs, the iconic clash unfolded. Wallace, with determination etched on his face, led a daring assault on the English garrison. Legend has it that Wallace, showing no mercy, set fire to the chapel where English soldiers had sought refuge, sealing their fate. With historical reports of others driven to the cliff edges, faced a perilous plunge with no survivors. Dunnottar, once under Scottish control, became a stirring chapter in the struggle for independence. So moving on to the 14th century, Dunnottar Castle became deeply intertwined with the Keith clan. Led by Sir William Keith, the Great Marshal of Scotland, who received these lands from King Robert the Bruce, solidifying Clan Keith's status among Scotland's elite families. The Keith family's tenure marked a transformative era for Dunnottar, evolving from a military stronghold to a stately residence that reflected their rising stature. Sir William Keith initiated the construction of the first stone-built sections of Dunnottar Castle, known as the Keep, in the late 14th century. This marked the beginning of significant expansions and enhancements that would over the centuries shape the castle into a formidable fortress. Now the Keiths were the original influencers, setting castle renovation trends long before home makeover shows were a thing. Now another very interesting part of Dunnottar's history came during the middle of the 17th century, which was a pretty turbulent time for Scotland and the British Isles. During Oliver Cromwell's rise in the 17th century, Dunnottar Castle played a significant role, especially in the context of the English Civil War. In the 1650s, Dunnottar was deemed the most secure location in Scotland, ideal for safeguarding the Scottish crown jewels from Cromwell's advancing forces. These treasures, symbolising Scotland's monarchy, included the ceremonial crown, sceptre and sword of state. In 1651, Cromwell's army, led by General Overton, besieged the castle. Despite the limited resources, with just 69 men and 42 guns, they faced a formidable English army. Now, the potential capture of the Scottish crown jewels by English forces posed a threat to national pride. Now, to prevent this, a daring plan was executed by Reverend Granger and his wife Christine from the nearby Kenneth parish. Christine, under the guise of seeking comfort from her friend inside the castle, smuggled the jewels out, hidden in her clothing. They were then secretly buried under the pulpit of their church, safeguarding them until they were unearthed a decade later during King Charles's restoration. Now, the castle was under such a tight siege, even the mice were considering surrender. The siege inflicted severe damage on Dunnottar, leading to its gradual ruin. Following the 1651 siege's aftermath, Dunnottar shifted from a noble residence to a military station, housing part-time soldiers as the Keith clan relocated to Inverugie Castle. Now this here is the former prison of the Covenanters. The Covenanters were a Scottish Presbyterian movement that emerged in the 17th century, advocating for the Church of Scotland's independence from royal interference, particularly against the attempts by Stuart kings to impose Anglican practices. Their commitment was symbolised by signing the National Covenant in 1638, which was a pledge to maintain their religious doctrine and oppose changes imposed by the monarchy. This movement faced severe persecution, especially under Charles II, leading to a period known as the Killing Time, where many Covenanters were imprisoned or executed for their beliefs. The castle became the grim holding ground for 167 Covenanters who defied the king's religious reforms, leading to their imprisonment in the abysmal conditions of what became known as the Whigs' Vault. The inhumane conditions they faced included standing ankle deep in their own filth, with survival hinging on purchasing basic food and water from their captors. The accommodation was so bad, even the ghosts preferred to haunt elsewhere. The remaining captives faced a bleak fate as they were transported across the Atlantic to the West Indies, with many succumbing to illness and fever on the voyage to New England. Despite centuries of turmoil, Dunnottar endures as a symbol of Scotland's resilience. Thanks to the efforts of Lord and Lady Cowdray in the early 20th century, the castle has been preserved for future generations to explore and admire. Dunnottar Castle stands as a beacon of Scotland's rich heritage, inviting visitors from around the world to uncover its secrets and immerse themselves in its timeless beauty. Well folks, that's the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy exploring Dunnottar Castle. I know history for some people can be quite boring, but I hope I made it seem interesting and not too dull. But I mean, there's nothing dull or boring about Dunnottar. I mean, you've got Pictish stones and an old Pictish settlement on the sea stack here at Dunnicaer. Got history of William Wallace in the end of the 13th century. I mean, Dunnottar is just packed full of so much history. It really is one of the greatest castles in Scotland, and it's no wonder to see why. Anyway, it's getting a bit late and I need to get home in case I miss my dinner. So if you did enjoy the video folks, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help it grow, and turn on notifications if you don't mind, because you know, it helps me get more views. So anyway, folks, take care, and I'll see you next time. Take care.